We're in. And as we start this episode, we're going to do a little insight here on a little bet we're going to do. And I don't care if anybody hates these types of things. Today's episode, welcome on back to Second and Short under Mosaic MC, the Mosaic Media Communications. I am Tyler Lauder. He is Jason Teasley. Off recording. We are talking about a bet, and I think I saved him. Today's episode is all about handing out those wide receiver superlatives. We're going to hand out who we think is going to be the MVP of this year, wide receiver one, the number one rookie you should be going for, and guys that we kind of think you should avoid, and everybody's going to hate me for it once I tell you who that is. But we're talking about tight ends. And this guy over here, or where he's at, talking the other day about Dalton Schultz. That's who I think is going to finish outside the top 15. That's a high draft pick ADP. And I said, you're crazy. You're going to get eaten alive. Makes no sense. And he came over to my side, but he wants to do a little bet. So we're going to do a bet. I'm going to propose it. He's going to accept it. Okay. If Dalton Schultz fails to finish as a top 10 tight end, then any pick from the late second or third in our rookie draft that we share in the Sunday League, if we're within 5-6 picks, we will just do a clean swap. If I'm like 5 picks ahead of you at like 2-7 and you're at 2-12, we will do a clean swap, and I will just clean swap with you.
All right.
That way we don't, like, I don't lose a player, but you gain the value on that. You know what I mean? And if people are mad at that, I don't care. It's my own money. I'm playing with it. They're my picks. I can trade them how I want to trade them. But if I'm right, you've got to do a pick swap with me if we're within 2 of each other.
Okay.
Because I feel like mine's easier to get. So that means if you're drafting at 210 and I'm 212, we can make that swap. All right. Well, there we go. Live betting. And anybody in our league that is listening to this and you're upset about that sucks. I'm sorry, but follow us on all of our social medias. You see them down below, but let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're handing out wide receiver superlatives, and we're going to kind of draw this in a slow direction, kind of move in. The first topic, we're going to be talking about who's going to finish as the wide receiver one, who's going to be the MVP of the wide receiver category. And this player has an ADP of the 6th receiver coming off the board right now. He last year finished as the number 3 receiver because he was pretty electric, doing a lot of things. Maybe he's more than a wide receiver. Jason, tell me, who is going to be the number 1 receiver at the end of this year?
I'm taking Deebo Samuels. I think that his versatility is what's going to give him that slight edge. Plus, they're going to move on from Garoppolo to Lance, and I think that's going to help Deebo transition to that top tier wide receiver. Being able to open up with the scrambling that's going to be able at the quarterback position, it's going to open up him down the field to create some separation and get open for the yards. And we know that he's electric when the ball gets in his hands. So I think this is kind of a bold take, not so much risky as I have in the past, but I kind of like it.
I mean, it's semi-bold. A lot of people are thinking that, I'm one of those guys that I am, and we'll play devil's advocate here. I am 100% selling all my Deebo shares. This isn't because I think he's going to have a bad year coming up. I just think that every player in the NFL has a shining star season or an asterisk season where you could point to it and be like, that's their greatest season ever. That's never going to happen again. And if we were doing this podcast, I don't even know, was it 24 years ago? I would have done the same thing on Randy Moss, and I would have been wrong. I would have looked right for a little bit, but then I would have been wrong eventually after his second year. But that's kind of how I sell players. When their value hits a peak, I sell them for something a little bit less, plus something that I think will overall benefit me in the long run. But otherwise, yeah, Deebo has a great chance to finish here as the wide receiver 1. His competition obviously comes from, we're going to be worrying about George Kittle missed some games last year, so that's kind of a factor. We know he had a lot of carries in the backfield, so that's kind of a factor. But with Lance running a little bit more than Garoppolo, that might not need to happen as much. We know that Elijah Mitchell, who we talked about on our previous running back superlatives, go back and check out that video there and see what we thought about him. But he's going to be involved. They just drafted another rookie. We still have Sermon there. Brandon Ayuk is supposed to be taking a step forward again. He kind of he's like, I don't know, doing like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So maybe now he'll take another step forward here and be where he was as a rookie. But for really though, Deebo Samuel creates a lot of separation. And the biggest thing is when Trey Lance runs out of that pocket and has to create, a la Russell Wilson type of plays, and Deebo Samuel gets the ball in open field, he's able to create yards after the catch for himself. He's fantastic at it. And with how athletic he is and agile, he's going to be able to extend drives and extend plays, probably get a lot of first downs this year. I don't expect him to hit a ton of touchdowns, but I do think that if you're going to be the wide receiver 1, you've probably got to hit close to double-digit touchdowns. I haven't looked this up. It's just a thought of mine, but I don't know how many guys have finished as the wide receiver 1 with less than 10 touchdowns. So that'd be an interesting thing to kind of look at. I don't think many do. It probably has happened, but those touchdowns do help. And I think if Deebo can see, 90 catches, like 120 plus targets, hit that like 1,400 yard mark and get about 10 touchdowns, we're not even talking about his rushing prowess that he can bring. A wide receiver 1 is likely for him. Cooper Kupp should probably take a step down. Justin Jefferson probably will take a little step down only because KJ Osborne will be taking a step up and Irv Smith Jr. will be back from Minnesota. So that will kind of step them up a little bit. And Jamar Chase is going to see more coverage. We're going to see probably more spread to everybody else on that team. T. Higgins is rising there. Spoiler, we're going to talk about T. Higgins today. And yeah, I think this is very likely. I mean, the wide receiver position to predict the number 1 receiver is extremely hard. It is the hardest position of all these to like predict preseason, because I could tell you 6, 7 guys, and at the end of the day, you could look at me and be like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and if you think about Cooper Kupp wasn't even in the discussion last year and finished wide receiver 1. So I mean, there's a lot of factors. So predicting wide receiver 1 is like throwing a dart at a dartboard.
100%. So now let's move on to let's talk about ADP. We're going to talk about a guy that is projected to get drafted between 1 and 10 wide receivers that I think is going to finish below top 15. We're looking at he's still going to be in the wide receiver 2 range, but a guy that is getting drafted as the wide receiver 9 right now. He's getting drafted as the 26th overall player in single quarterback for PPR is AJ Brown, newly acquired Philadelphia Eagles, get traded for that pick 18 where the Titans took Treylon Burks. He joins now Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, got Kenneth Gainwell. I mean, there's a lot of people there to feed, and this team ran the ball more than anybody else in the NFL last year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I just don't see how AJ Brown's going to finish higher than he did previously. Now, he finishes the wide receiver 34 this past year. And obviously, we can't just sit here and say, well, I mean, he was hurt. So, he was on a team that, oh, wait, what do the Titans do? They run the ball a lot. Yeah. We had less competition there, and they run the ball less than Philly. And now we're going to sit here and just jump him up to wide receiver 9. I see why he's there. The talent is fantastic. It's off the charts. He's a guy that I want if I'm doing a startup in a dynasty, because he's young and I think he's going to be able to produce for me. But he's getting drafted ahead of guys like Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, guys that are either younger, B, more productive, or C, offer the exact same production level as him. But, that health is there. I'm going to take it. They're on a better offense that is more tailored to them. The Chargers throw better and throw more than the Eagles. Mike Evans is more consistent than A.J. Brown. Jalen Waddle is younger than A.J. Brown-ish. So I want to take those and run with them.
Yeah, and you also got factor weather. You're totally changing climates. Tennessee, yeah, they see some weather, but not Philly weather. Mm-hmm. Philly weather is a lot of different. You have a lot of rain, a lot of cold. That impacts a wide receiver. And I think the fact that Philly does run the ball a lot, they're going to be trying to be more of a time management, which is what we're going to talk about here shortly. Yes. Over playing catch up. And I think that when you have a time management philosophy versus gunslinger philosophy, your opportunities are less, so therefore your chances to score less.
And so this is AJ Brown's career. Now, In 16 games as a rookie, he finished as wide receiver 21 in PPR. Still, that's fantastic. In 14 games in 2020, he still finished as wide receiver 12 in PPR. And last year in 13 games, so one less game, finished as wide receiver 32. Julio Jones wasn't around the whole year. Derrick Henry was out and hurt. Yeah, Tannehill took a step back, but we can also probably agree that A.J. Brown took a step back, and that's kind of how it mixed there. So ultimately, stay away from A.J. Brown as a top 10 guy when there are younger, better options out there for me. I think he's going to finish around wide receiver 20. Let's move on. Speaking of A.J. Brown and speaking of rookie wide receivers, why don't you tell me who's going to finish as the number one rookie wide receiver this year?
The guy that the Titans traded A.J. Brown to get, and that was Burks. I think Burks has the skill set to be the top wide receiver in this class. I know I'm going to catch a lot of hate over that, taking, because London's going as a much higher pick to an offense that has a similar outlook with the options there. But I really like Burks fitting into this Tennessee offense. It's not that he's going to have to be down there and be flashy. He's going to have to just produce. And I think that's the difference between him and A.J. Brown. He is coming out of college, he produced when he got the ball. He made some difficult catches. He kind of flew under the radar. A.J. Brown was a totally different specimen. He commanded coverage. And this is basically A.J. Brown liked. It's kind of still is the same skill sets, same body size and everything, but he flies under the radar a lot. And I didn't realize how much he flew under the radar until I started watching tape on him after the draft. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think Burks is going to be your rookie wide receiver one.
Yeah, and the thing that we have here is that we're not predicting something too crazy here. I mean, you have Treylon Burks finishing as wide receiver 27 on the year, which, based on what I've just said, I mean, A.J. Brown, we have 12, 21, and 34. 27 probably falls in that safe spot as a rookie, and he goes to a team that doesn't really have a lot of pass catchers. They have Robert Woods coming off of that injury. They did bring in Austin Hooper at tight end. Derrick Henry is still going to run the rock a lot. Treylon Burks, everybody's talking about right now because he has asthma and they're all worried about it. But last year we were all worried about Jamar Chase, and can he even catch a football? Does he even know what a football is anymore? He hasn't seen one in so long, and there's a lot of smoke screen out there. And I think the Tennessee Titans don't want to just be like, yeah, Treylon Burks is everything he was advertised as. You all are idiots for letting him fall and being like the fifth receiver taken. Like, you shouldn't have in the real NFL draft. I think they're kind of playing with us here. I think they're easing him in. And I mean, it's just probably different. It's different air in Tennessee than it is in Arkansas. It's probably not much different, but it's probably different. And I think he has a great opportunity because he's like a legit one. Like, we look at somebody like Garrett Wilson. He's got a lot of competition in New York. We look at somebody like Drake London. Yes, he could have a great opportunity there as maybe like a lone man outside of Kyle Pitts, but they brought in a lot of who's who of wide receivers. I think the ball's going to get spread all around a lot with Mariota. And then all the other receivers, I don't really put them in that range. I think Burks is in that solid 3 to be there. I don't think Jameson Williams is going to be able to play a full year this year, so that's going to take him out of the running. And everybody else seems to be like a coin flip. I hope they're going to work. So now let's move on. I feel like we're kind of just like transitioning to guys on new teams now is what we're doing. But we're going to talk about a wide receiver that's getting drafted 20 plus on ADP that I think has a good chance to finish as a top 12 wide receiver. The best chance of all these guys, which actually is hard because there's so many good receivers here. But last year he was the 135th receiver, right? It's pretty bad. His ADP is 37th receiver drafted. That's pretty bad. That's like a wide receiver 4. But I think he's going to finish top 12 receiver. That guy is Kansas City Chiefs' new number 1, Juju Smith-Schuster. Yes, I know. They still have McCole Hardman, who was there last year. They still have Travis Kelce, who's still there. We know Clyde Edwards-Helaire is there. They just brought in Ronald Jones at running back. They gave Evander Scantlin more overall better money long-term and guaranteed up front and everything. Juju is a better receiver. They drafted Sky Moore. Juju is a better receiver. That's my thing. Yes, potentially I think Sky Moore is going to take that spot. He's going to be the number 1 there. We project that. But Juju is a guy that a couple years ago had a fantastic season with Big Ben and obviously was riding at the end of the coattails of Big Ben, whose arm just kept declining. So play of everybody around him is going to decline. The whole point, that's what happens with these quarterbacks. Like Peyton Manning lit it up one year and was an MVP and broke records and everything. And then a couple years later, none of the pass catchers for the Broncos were worth hardly anything that year because his arm was dead. It was a noodle. And if you're not Michael Thomas running quick slants all the time for Drew Brees, it's hard to work with a noodle quarterback arm, you know? But Juju Smith-Schuster comes in a spot where he's got the experience of playing with a vet quarterback that a lot of the other guys do, but he understands how to play in just as the number one guy. Like he knows how to do that. He knows how to play there when he's got younger guys that are breathing down his neck, and he can do well. Coming off an injury season where he can be healthy, he upgrades at quarterback tremendously, where these other guys really don't upgrade. Like MVS doesn't really upgrade from Mahomes to Rodgers. It's a push in real life NFL.
Yeah.
And so if he can't get it done with Rodgers, why do we just assume he's going to get it done with Mahomes? Like because they gave him more money? That doesn't make sense to me. But Juju's been able to do it with a lesser quarterback, and now he's going to have all this talent here. If he remains healthy, I don't see how this guy doesn't get 90 plus catches.
Yeah, and Juju's also one of those receivers that is good with body control to make the adjustments to catch the ball. And I think that's going to help a lot because Mahomes likes to throw when he's scrambling, throws at weird angles. So the body control needs to be there. Tyreek Hill showed that because Tyreek was able to come back for a lot of balls and have that quick step, get that separation, and then he was off to the races with his magnificent speed. Now, Juju isn't going to be a speedster by no means, but he could create that separation and get those extra 8-9 yards when catching balls off weird angles. And I think that's going to be the biggest attribute of his trajectory in Kansas City.
And when you look at it, he's getting drafted around the same area as Treylon Burks, a rookie, as Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, Chase Claypool, Kadarius Toney. Like, I just think that he's like the guy that I look in all that list. Like Burks, I get, we say is probably gonna be number one there, but we don't know how that's going to work out. The only guy around him that's getting drafted that I think is going to be number one is Rashad Bateman. You switch those guys, take him. I'm fine with that. But Juju, I think, has a great chance to let the other deep threats, Hardman, MVS, Sky Moore, to spread in open space for him. There's a reason why Travis Kelce dominates for the Chiefs so much, because those intermediate routes are wide open. He has one-on-one coverage. Juju Smith-Schuster after his first cut is fantastic, I think. I like watching him off that first move when he can break off a receiver. If he's not impressed, even if he's impressed, he's got a nice size to his body that he can make those, close contact catches. I'm not worried about him at all here. And I think Juju, I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver one, but of guys drafted this late, I think he has a fantastic chance. And like I said, he's getting drafted as wide receiver 37. That's 87 overall. You're going to get a guy in, I don't even know what that is when we break it down, like the 7th or 8th round. All right, there we go. So now let's talk about who we need to avoid. Now, this is going to come to the hate of a lot of people. Nobody's going to like this. They're all going to be mad at me. They're going to be like, you're an idiot. You're stupid. This doesn't make any sense. And you're right. It doesn't. And maybe I am. Getting drafted right now, wide receiver 12, Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins. Avoid him at all costs right now. Now, why would we avoid him? He finished last year as the wide receiver 25 in a pretty high profile offense. A team that has Jamar Chase, that has Tyler Boyd. Joe Mixon catches the ball a lot. My thing is we've seen this, and you've seen this as well. People are starting to rank T. Higgins as like a top 8 receiver now in startups. He's starting to get drafted a little bit higher. His ADP is going to continue to rise. If his ADP hits where I have to take him in the first 2 rounds, I'm staying away because I don't want him to be my wide receiver 1. That's my thing. I know teams can support 2 top guys that do really well. We've seen it in the past, but I don't want him to be my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and I don't think the Bengals themselves can support 2 wide receiver 1s on the same team. I think Chase is going to continue his trajectory up. Higgins is going to benefit from that, yes, because you're going to see a lot more coverage over on Chase. Yeah, he's going to, but there's a lot of players in that realm that I would much prefer as a wide receiver 1 over Higgins.
Yeah, and like we were talking, I mean, somebody like Mike Evans is getting drafted just before him. And yes, Mike Evans is a little older, but Mike Evans is the most consistent receiver in NFL history, except for outside of Jerry Rice, we could say. And on top of that, you have Jalen Waddle, who has the same, aura to him as well. He's a little bit younger, not much. He's in that range though, where his running mate is somebody way older than him in Tyreek Hill. And then we have somebody like Deontay Johnson, who his running mate in him is Chase Claypool, who we don't really trust, or somebody we're going to talk about in a little bit as well. And then we have guys like DK Metcalf, who again has an older pairing with him. Terry McLaurin is like a locked in number one. So for me, I think those guys have a better chance to be a top 12 receiver than T. Higgins. T. Higgins didn't do it last year when the Bengals threw the ball all the time. And we see guys like Tyler Boyd that are still like getting so underrated right now. And I'll never understand the hate for Tyler Boyd. I love him. He's one of those guys you can get for like a third round pick, it seems like, in most leagues. But last year, Jamar Chase finishes the number 5 receiver. Like I said, T. Higgins finishes the 25th receiver. And I'm going to scroll down because I didn't do my homework. And I'm really interested to see, oh yeah, Tyler Boyd finishes the 32nd receiver. Like they have 3 guys that are getting over 800 yards. At any point, any of those guys could be the number 1 receiver on the day. And that's too risky for me to have, as T. Higgins is. If I'm drafting guys my number 1 receiver, I want him locked in. He doesn't leave that number 1 receiver starting spot on my roster unless he has a bye week. But a guy that I can't trust to be the number 1 guy on my team, it's too risky for me at this point.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I'd rather go with the security over the crapshoot and the hype.
Yeah, and you might see a situation with him rising. I mean, you might be able to draft. He's probably getting drafted in the range of like CeeDee Lamb as well, and like Stephon Diggs and guys that I think you can rely on more as your number 1. Even like Tyreek Hill, we were talking about. Even though we talked about Waddle as well, Teagan's the guy that if you do draft him, or when I say avoid him, you're going to avoid trading for him because he costs so much. But you might be able to flip him for Devontae Adams and something because somebody might want to go younger. But otherwise, getting drafted as a wide receiver 1, I don't trust that he'll finish as a wide receiver 1. I have him finishing around wide receiver 19, which is still an improvement from last year. That's still about 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he's still going to be a good player. We're not saying he's going to be bad, but for where you have to get him, it's too risky for me. I'd rather just get another running back, or I'd rather just take a risk on somebody else that I think is going to be a number 1. Now let's cut in. Who is going to be the surprise of the year at receiver for you?
And I feel like all of our picks are kind of like mirroring, like kind of linked together because with this, I'm going Pickens in Pittsburgh. I think that he's going to be the developmental wide receiver that can step up and take over that wide receiver 2 and push for wide receiver 1 numbers, especially since he's going to be able to grow in that system as the season goes on, because he's going, I expect to get a lot of second team work where you're going to see him working with a rookie quarterback. You're going to get that chemistry. So when the takeover happens, when Pickett takes over, you've already got instant chemistry. So yeah. I think that this is going to be the surprise due to the repertoire he's going to build and the fact that Pittsburgh doesn't have a legit solidified wide receiver 2, and that can push for the wide receiver 1 numbers.
There's talks of Claypool potentially getting dealt before the season because a lot of teams are still wide receiver needy. And George Pickens is a guy that's getting drafted in rookie drafts at the back end of the first round, beginning of the second round. If you're getting him anywhere post 10, I think you're getting a steal for a guy that if he did not have the injuries that he had, which is a concern, and we have to mention that, he would probably be getting drafted around like the 5th or 6th spot overall in rookie drafts and probably have a higher ADP. He's the 70th receiver coming off the board. We're looking, he's like overall, he's like, I think it's like 189 they have him. So we're talking about like literally your last few picks of like a redraft, or, you know, your rounds 13, 14 of a startup range where you could probably snag him. And he's getting drafted after guys like Corey Davis, Jameson Crowder, Marvin Jones, Tim Patrick, McCole Hardman, Marquez Valdez Scantling, like, and he has this upside. to potentially be maybe the best receiver in this rookie class. We don't have him there over Treylon Burks because of the injury history. And also he's dealing with Trubisky or Kenny Pickett at quarterback. But Deontay Johnson should hold the lead on number one. And I wouldn't be surprised if he surpassed Claypool as the number two week 7 or 8 if he's healthy and good to go. He has extreme talent, and he's going to be one of those guys that everybody's going to go, how did the Steelers get him so late? Oh, wait, what's it? The Steelers drafted another day 2 receiver? Oh, there we go. He's got, nope, there it is. He's going to be good. They always are, at least for a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you can get him in round like 13 and then flip him the next year for a good pick, I mean, you could increase your value of where you're getting him. A guy that was drafted as the 12th or 13th best rookie, and you're trading him for a top 5 pick in, 2024, potentially after he booms. And that is going to do it for us here on Second and Short. Mosaic MC Media Communications Productions here. If you're watching here on YouTube and you've made it this long, like this video down below. Thank you to everybody that's been following this series so far. We still have tight ends we're going to talk about next week. Spoiler alert, we're talking about it here in 5 minutes, but for you guys, it's a week away. And also make sure you check us out on TikTok, because maybe you don't want to watch the full version. Because maybe this video is, it's too long. I don't have 25 minutes in my day. I don't want to listen to this. Check us out on TikTok. We do quick reviews of this after this is dropped, or we have little videos where you can catch recaps of everything. Social media, we got graphics and photos coming out. And even if you're here for football, I suggest go check us out on Instagram, because we're gonna have more stuff from this media communications company boosting out. We have great wildlife photography, great stuff of local businesses, great local sports teams and everything. So just come check out the awesome stuff we have there, and make sure you interact with Jason over on Twitter, as we got polls and everything going on every day as well. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you guys next week. And as always, get out there and make some trades.